everyone, welcome to 12am Coding. So today we will be going to see a new concept in our Spring Boot series, which is calling the API from the code. Okay, so first of all, let's understand what this particular concept means, and then we will be moving to the implementation. So let me give you a very basic example that, for example, in your organization, there can be multiple microservices. Okay, one microservice is this, then another microservice, this can be one microservice, this can be one microservice. So why we create the microservice architecture is because these microservice will be the small units into the particular code, and these will be communicating inside actually. So this particular microservice, if it needs something from the, let's say, A, B, C, D microservice we are having. So if A microservice needs something from the B, then it should be flexible enough to call this particular microservice, right? It can just request something and then it will receive the response. Okay, so this is the basic idea. Okay, and to do this particular thing, we need to call the APIs. For example, in your B microservice, we are having one API. So there should be a way through which your A microservice can access this particular API, right? Then only the beauty of microservice architecture will be coming out. Okay, so let me give you a very simple example. For example, that you are having one database, okay, and in that database you are having multiple tables. So one microservice you created for the database operations, okay, DB operations, and in this particular you are having the connections of the database, okay, database connections. Now the thing is that if you are having multiple microservices here, okay, let's say one, two, three microservices. Now all three microservices needs the database data actually eventually, okay. But the thing is that if you in this microservice also, if you will provide the DB connection, in this also you need to provide DB connection, in this also you need to provide DB connection. So what you can do, you can just concise your DB connection to one microservice, and you can expose the API endpoints for the different queries and all, and then your microservices can call that particular API from that microservice, DB microservice. Okay, and then whatever response this particular microservice will give, your another microservices can use that. Okay, so this is the concept of calling the API of one microservice into another, and this is the basic beauty of microservice architecture, that we can communicate between each and every microservices. Okay, so in Spring Boot we can do this particular thing via REST template. Okay, so REST template is a class, it's a web client actually, so it is used to call the APIs from the different microservices. Okay, so it's as simple as that. Okay, it's not a complicated thing, it's as simple as that. So let me show you one example through which it will be clear to us that how it is going to work actually. So for example, I am having one microservice which is, let's say, this is Spring REST API. In this particular microservice, I'll be creating one controller actually. For example, I'll be creating some controller, let's say fruit controller. Okay, and in this fruit controller, let me make it as a REST controller. Okay, and let me create one get API in this one, and this will be returning you a simple fruit actually. Okay, and let's say it will be returning you a string name of the fruit. Okay, then let's say fruit is the method name, and it is returning you, let's say, simple apple. Okay, now if we will run this particular application, okay, 1 minute. So if we run this particular application, then it will be running on some port, right? So it is running on 9091 port. So if I'll be going to my web browser and I'll be hitting this particular API, then this will be returning me Apple, as it is a GET API, simple thing. Okay, so for example, this particular API, rather than calling it from web browser, you want to call from different microservice. So for example, I am having one more microservice, this Spring demo. In this particular microservice, I want to call this particular URL. Okay, so what I can do for this also, let's say we will be creating one controller and let's name it as test controller for now. Okay, so this particular controller, let me make it as a REST controller. Okay, and after the REST controller, I can create a GET API here also, and this will be just a simple API, let's say, okay, test fruit. Okay, this will be the test fruit API, and in this one what I can do, I can create one more method which will be returning me a string, and let's say get fruit. Okay, this is also getting the fruit, but this is getting the fruit from another microservice. Okay, so what I can do now, to call this particular API into the microservice, we need the REST template actually, as I already told. We are having one class into Spring Boot, which is REST template, and we can create a simple object of this REST template. Okay. And there are some methods into this particular REST template which we can use to call the APIs. So what we can simply do that if we want to call this particular get API, okay. So if we want to call this particular API, okay. So what we can do, we can use the REST template, and there is a method which is getForEntity. So as this is the get mapping, right? For the post and put and other things, we'll be seeing the example later. But as this is the simple get API, fruit API, so we are calling the getForEntity. And I'll be telling you why we are using this getForEntity only. Then you can provide the URL here, and the URL I can copy from here. And as this will be returning me the string, so I can provide the return type here actually. String.class, it is returning the string. Now this particular method will be returning you the response entity actually. Okay. So response entity, I'll be telling you, it will just provide some metadata for the API actually. Okay. So we can give a string here and then response you are having. Now you can simply return this particular response. Okay. Return uh, response dot get body. Okay, so what this get body will do, this get body will be returning you the data what this particular API is sending. So this is sending a string and you are getting the string here also. Okay, and this API should be returning me the apple. So let me run this particular microservice now. As we are calling the another microservice from this microservice, so this is running on 8090 port. So I can just go ahead and call our test fruit endpoint actually. Okay, so if you call this particular endpoint, then if you see, we are getting the apple also as same from 1991 microservice. So in this particular case, we are able to call the another microservice endpoint from one microservice. Okay, and this is getForEntity. GetForEntity is returning a response entity actually. This response entity is a simple thing which will just provide you some metadata. So if you want to get the status of the API, right, whatever this API is returning, so response dot get status code also is a there option. Okay, so this will be returning you either if it given 200 or 400 or 500 response, those kind of things. Okay, so yes guys, that's it for this particular tutorial. So to get the access of these kind of interesting tutorials, please subscribe to our channel, and if you like the video, then definitely share with your friends and press the like button. Thank you. See you in the next tutorial.